This is the second installment of the Anti-Academic Doctrine, entitled The Education Revolution. Thank you for your comments. In my introduction, I spoke of a different kind of educator. Now let's explore this advocate and his campaign in greater detail. Public disapproval and disgust with public schools that is shared by all who have been disappointed by them doesn't reach a natural conclusion, like replacing it with another institution or individual college students getting their money back. It just slowly builds like the surface of Venus until the day it erupts like a social geyser. An A student being expelled for letting a science experiment explode. A student ordered by the school to cut her natural hair or be expelled. In our area, students are made to walk with their hands clasped behind them as if they were in chains. A parent was arrested for trying to take their child home early. None of whom were dissenters or critics of the school system, but loyal followers, until this has happened in every school in every town in the country. A planned, controlled transition would be better, and an activist has to initiate this process, even if it is taken the rest of the way by someone else or by a group. No matter how strongly the importance of teamwork is stressed, it is the actions of one individual that will be the linchpin in making proactive developments possible, because citizens are elected to office on an individual basis in this country. So the decision must come down to these groups selecting a candidate and his campaign. The entire contribution of this initiator could simply be to recognize the problems and existing solutions and identify the unique place and time that is the tipping point at which this change takes place. It is his awareness that sets him aside and allows him to identify these circumstances. Many candidates have come and gone who are displeased with one part of the state of things, or somewhat in tune with alternative methods, each in their own way, since the truth touches us all differently. Of all the horror stories I've read, there aren't many cases of people disavowing something because their trust has been broken, or acting out of self-worth or their own beliefs to any effect. I believe most of these cases are resolved through abject surrender behind closed doors, regardless of what was done to them, and reformers come from this group. One who thinks kindergarten is starting too early competes against someone who thinks college is becoming obsolete, but they all still have one foot in the academic pool. The initiator, who can be anyone with the means and opportunity, has no strings attached. He would be entirely devoted to students and their interests without condescending to decide those interests for them. This person would do things previously unthinkable by the academic majority, like forge an alliance between public schools and alternative methods to find the best solution. He or she would ask questions their predecessors have never asked, such as, what do you do if a student cannot be taught? Or a plan to incorporate outsiders into the school system and help them find a place in that institution. The person who is capable of bringing such a revolution is someone who has undergone a series of choices all people are faced with, in which he has maintained a trueness to himself or anything he believes in at the hands of his instructors, employers, or parents, where most people would capitulate. since many young people are threatened with eviction, termination, or expulsion over matters that are virtually insignificant. He may not have done this every single time. Perhaps he realizes privately what most people only suspect. But our society has made him so rare, the details of his life can be portrayed in depth. His name does not appear under any of the traditional educational superlatives an employer might look for. He is someone who is fully qualified in his field, and yet has the fortitude to refuse to pursue it in the form academia provides, probably at great cost to himself. But these costs do not deter him, and thus he gains something more. Self-made accomplishments and proficiency make people take notice. Advancement in the right work environment may even take him to a place where academicians can't go. He is someone to whom people feel comfortable bringing practical concerns, who offers solutions others can't give. Such a paradox does not officially exist in science, mathematics, or engineering. Only in politics is there a chance for a non-subscriber to contribute. And it is this harbinger, this patriot, who can bring the democratic method to the classroom. To understand what drives him to do this, from early childhood, he has a pure understanding of things like equality. Not that he was born with rare insight, but that it simply wasn't taken from him. He feels personally offended at the sight of student dismay and wants to help them at the most basic level, unheard of for a politician. It is not his teaching ability that qualifies him. It is the fact that he has not changed since he was a student himself, and is not compromised by considerations from the adult world. That is the qualifier for being their representative. Representation, not education, is his first job because it is not 100% clear what education is, unless you're omnipotent. Therefore, the definition of an educator must be one who makes learning possible. A doorman, representing the desire to enlighten because he embodies this desire himself. Just as this simple knowledge was not stolen from him, he can help protect students from being deprived. You might ask the obvious question, if the person described constitutes an educator, then what are all those who currently hold office? The difference between this person and traditional school board members is where his ultimate priority lies. Everyone knows what the good intentions of these individuals are, but are the following motives a factor? Is their goal their own prosperity? To see the school system thrive as a business and trounce its competitors? Are they part of a long-standing tradition that makes their institution a club, a Masonic order apart from the rest of society? Do they see dealing with the outside world as us versus them? Do they enjoy the advantages that authority over others gives them, such as a place to vent their personal shortcomings? These objectives are often in conflict with education. The goal of education is to respect it wherever it occurs, meaning if another institution demonstrates teaching methods superior to yours, step aside and allow it to be the dominant education provider. Or acknowledge that this is occurring outside of program or in spite of the actions of those appointed to give it. Mainstream academicians are devoted to the political goal. The most visible sign of this agenda is often school policy. Every year, loyal students are punished over the most frivolous circumstances in which no practical reason is required beyond the preservation of the policy. Everyone knows about the 6th grader suspended for having a Tweety Bird keychain. The school system is preserving itself at the expense of people, and not because of any one administration, but in full automation. No tolerance means no reasoning, no interpretation, and no mercy will be employed regardless of the case. It is dispensed in curt statements designed to minimize the need for explanation. Decisions are being made by an unthinking machine that neither considers events nor empowers the school board to do so, reducing them to its servants, whose only job requirement is the ability to read and repeat. Who then are these individuals representing? An institution is supposed to bend and adapt to meet the needs of people. They trust their representatives to ensure every decision is made for a reason. When it does otherwise, it has ceased to be a public service. Many of these educators come from backgrounds an activist cannot hope for, such as successfully running for office in their hometown every term for the simplest, most self-serving of reasons, such as being a third-generation member or having their own child currently enrolled. I've often wondered, what do the kids feel about being used as a sign of their parents' fidelity to the school system for the purposes of winning an election? If you feel that you represent an upstanding institution that has served your family well and must be preserved, what do you do when others are campaigning to solve specific problems they deem in such need that it requires their putting their life aside to run for office to fix it? Do you argue against the validity of those issues, saying one person's problem isn't everyone's problem? One of the most common questions asked of school board candidates is, what is the biggest problem your district now faces? Many of them do not answer, or their reply is something like funding or perception. Running for office just to keep things the way they are is a petty motive, because election is not guaranteed to anyone so comfortably that it becomes a family tradition. The school system is not a happy brotherhood of workers, not for students who are in pain. There are many conservative districts where such a person can remain in office without fear of challenge, surrounded by like minds passing every proposal on their agenda before retiring at a ripe old age. It has become a routine. The initiator, on the other hand, strives from humble beginnings. He is able to deal with problems in ways his predecessors never conceived, such as by embracing alternative education, welcoming them into an educational family, with state educators taking the role of the servant in that family. Now, in many districts, the state does claim to embrace alternative methods and relinquishes students to them, which is a good thing. So let me explain the difference. In 2004, the state of Virginia made an about-face from its conservative history and decided to adopt self-directed learning for all school systems, a method that used to be kicked to the curb. Alternative educators have been promoting self-directed learning for decades, and suddenly this service is now provided by a faculty with no background in the subject. Instructors became required to watch hours of mandatory video in which the concept is explained by academicians as if it was their idea. I'm not up to speed on what became of this project. I don't know if its conceivers benefited from it or the students themselves. But the role of the state-funded program that I have in mind is not self-serving. If a small group comes up with something that works and is all the rage, they are rewarded and enabled. A school board that made some other method their thing, taking up people's time and money for it, can be in charge of that thing. Unfortunately, that's not how it works right now. One of the competing providers is the state authority. Any change has to go through them. But as long as someone like this can be elected, it is the school system itself that has been brought down by its own process. When alternative educators see a candidate for school board declare allegiance to their cause, empowering them with eyes and ears within the school system, they will provide the support he needs for prospects including votes, boycotts, and a plan to fill the public need with solutions the school system can't or won't give. Working through the dominant education provider is the most direct way for alternative institutions to reach their goals, whether they want to improve it, reform it, or shut it down. More on self-directed learning will be explored in my next segment, What is Alternative Education? Until then, thanks for listening. I welcome your comments.